Why in the world would I drill a hole in my perfectly good daily driver speed square? Let me show you why. That's why it turns your speed square into a compass. If you've ever picked one of these things up or seen somebody use it or even walked by it on the shelf, you've probably said to yourself, you know, I bet there's a lot of things you can do with something like that besides simply mark a 90-degree line. You're right. Let me show you a couple of them. We're going to talk about all these marks in just a minute, but right off the bat, if you've got a speed square and you've got a plumb bob, or in this case, a chalk box, you've got a level like this. Pull out a little string, doesn't have to be much. Hook the string over the pivot, like so, and then adjust until the string, let's make sure we're hanging free here, boys. Adjust until the string centers on 45 degrees, or in this case, swings equidistant each side of 45. Tune it up. That's tuned up right there. Get your pencil out. And that, sports fans, is very close to a level line. So everybody wants to talk about degrees, right? Whether it is the Protractor, 0 to 90, or whether it is common rafters or hipper valve. I mean, the degrees are the thing we're interested in. But before we do that, let's talk about the boost that this is for layout. 3.5 and 1.5 inches are easy. You see that right there on the Swanson? Now some of the other manufacturers, Johnson and Mays, don't seem to have that. But if you just want to come in from the end, there's 3.5 inches. Boom, that's an important measurement. There's 3.5 inches right here. 1, 2, 3.5. Boom, there's another 3.5. 1.5 inches. Maybe you're coming off an intersecting wall mark right here. Got a wall coming in. And you want to mark a king stud or an equivalent. Boom, there's 1.5 inches. And then maybe you want to pick up a trimmer. Do the 1.5 inches again. Trimmer, king stud, coming back the other way. See how handy that is? Boom. It's part of the doctrine of anti-tape. So you see those little dental notches? I mean, if that was trim, that would be dental. These are notches for scribing straight lines, primarily for rips. The beauty is they are opposing the measurement that they coincide with. So instead of getting out your chalk line and marking twice and snapping, with a little practice, you can draw 1.25 inches. Or maybe you need a 2-inch scribe line. Doing a little better for the camera. Or maybe you need 1/2 inch. Let's see. Actually, let's do 3/4, since it seems to be more conducive. Scribing is a part of carpentry, always has been, and it also is part of the doctrine of anti-tape. All right, let's talk about the Protractor, the designation of degrees between 0 and 90. Bam, up against the pivot. The pivot is very important. That's why we have the lip on here. As you begin to rotate the Protractor around 5 degrees, that is specifying a 5-degree angle over here. Let's jump up to 30 degrees. There's the mark, there's the edge of the board, there's 30, and there's 45, and so on, so on. There is 70. Pretty handy. Now, roof pitch. Common rafters. These are the rafters that run from the outside, typically from the outside walls to the center of a span, a ridge beam or a ridge board, usually common pitch, nothing fancy about it. You read it on this scale. There's a 1 in 12, 2 in 12, 3 and 12. Here's a bonus. The speed square will automatically give you the degree designation for the roof pitch. A 412 pitch is just a little bit over 18 degrees according to this. Let's jump up to a 612 pitch and mark what would be the plumb cut. This is the plumb cut which would lay up against the ridge or make the back of the seat cut. Okay, now I'm going to strike the hip and valley designation sort of a glancing blow. Hip and valley angles are different because the run is not over 12, but it's over 17, which is the length of the run coming in at a 45 degree from a common wall. Let's come down here. A 412 hip or valley, a 612 hip or valley, a 1212 hip or valley is different than a 1212 common. See that? There's the common, there's the hip. Don't mix them up. All right, let's back up to this diamond cutout. Full disclosure, I've never felt the need to use it. It's put on here to help with the seat cut. The seat cut is the horizontal cut that a rafter bears on the top plate with. I've always just eyeballed 3.5 if I wanted full bearing on a 2x4 wall. This can be done also by getting 90 degrees off a plumb cut and sliding the speed square up and down, maintaining the coincidence with the plumb cut that you're working on. That diamond corresponds with the 3.5-inch top plate. Boom. There would be your bird's mouth. Not sure that's helpful. Now another way to use that diamond would be to throw it up there, put the pivot against the bottom of the rafter, and bring the diamond over until your plumb cut line bisects the diamond from corner to corner. Corner in, corner out, pretty close to a level line, maybe better. Another thing separate from layout is actually cutting. It's a pretty good cutting guide. I like to bring my saw up to where I want it to cut, bring the square in contact with the saw. Nice and square if you can't see square, and you can do that in other angles if you're cautious. And for some reason, you feel like you need to. Now, I've never used or seen the need for or understood why that little 45-degree line is embossed across there. The only thing that comes to mind is if you laid out a hip or a valley and you wanted to cut a double 45 to where it lays in at the top or at the bottom, maybe you could put that across there and then do this. Boom. Boom. Yeah, and then do this. Does this save any effort? You know, if this is the keeper right there at the top of the hip, I don't know. So I don't see the utility of that. You guys will straighten me out. Somebody uses that every day, I'm quite sure. We already talked about if we drilled a hole in the bottom, you can use it to swing arcs or make circles in various diameters. It is a layout tool. It's pretty handy. Now, it's not the only tool that you can carry in your bags to get this work done. I've long been a fan of framing squares, but that's a hard thing to carry with you when you're crawling around through the rafters. Pretty hard to beat. Although my friend Dan has tried. We did a video on this. This is a pretty cool adaptation. And right off the bat, I can see that having the lip flip around would certainly facilitate swinging the arcs. So I don't know. It's a tool that you ought to have. And if you get in the habit of using it and it drops into your Occidental bags just the way it should, it's going to be hard to find a reason to ever change it out. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman. Keep up the good work.